morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Great to see all of you. I hope you're enjoying the reflections for the last few days. We're now into cultivating generosity, right? Which we'll talk about, but we'll go through some review of the days since we last met for cultivating joy, and then we'll go on to this week's theme. So we're just going to have an opening prayer and then a chance to be quiet. Last week, on the Wednesday, was the practice of examine. Did anyone try that? Page 39, just before we start with our prayer. So page 39, Wednesday, March 26th, so the day after we met.
Yeah.
The Wednesdays are the weekly the trials for practice, contemplative practice. And last week was the examine. And if you want to just take a moment and look at that, we'll try to do that for our quiet time this week. All right. So the examine, usually you would do it more at the end of the day, but we can't do that here. But you can still take time to look at what makes you most alive with joy. That's one of the questions it asks you to do. And it could be a glimpse of beauty, someone remembering someone's kind words to you, a child's laugh, or whatever it was that occurred through the day. Now again, we don't have a whole day to use, but even yesterday, we'll back it up like for yesterday. So when you have your quiet time, again, take a quick look at what it's telling you to do with the instructions, and then think of yesterday. Think, what brought you joy yesterday? What was it that brought you joy? And just focus on that. So what made it joyful? Was it in connection with another person? Was it a sense of accomplishment? Was it the beauty of nature? A quiet time of prayer? Whatever. And it says just pay attention to your body, your mind, your spirit, and how's it sort of touching you. Okay? So let's start with a prayer, and then we'll have a few minutes of quiet. And if you're able to, or use one of the other practices that is easier for you, if this one's a little tough, let us pray. Eternal Word, only begotten Son of God, teach me true generosity. Teach me to serve you as you deserve, to give without counting the cost, to fight heedless of wounds, to labor without seeking rest, to sacrifice myself without thought of any reward, save the knowledge that I have done your will. Amen. And that is St. Ignatius of Loyola's prayer for generosity, which again kicks off this week's theme. So let's take a few minutes, and whatever's easiest for you, whatever allows you to have that quiet moment. If you want to try the examine prayer, try that, or save it for later on tonight or tomorrow. Okay. So about 3 minutes, and again start with a deep breath, and breathe in and hold for a moment, breathe out, and use whatever practice is good for you. Would anyone like to share if you were using the examine? What instance of joy or an experience of joy were you able to recall in your quiet moments? Was there anything that came to your mind? Oh, Deacon Becky?
I've been painting a new icon, and I get lost when I'm painting icons,
Yeah.
and it truly is a very spiritual thing for me. And sometimes though I get caught up in, what should I do with that? Why is that hate doing that, and why is my colors not the same as that? And,
Uh-huh.
rather than just the joy of it.
The joy of that,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, thank you. Can anyone recall something between last Tuesday and today that brought you a moment of joy? Is there something that you experienced, a person, an interaction, something you observed that gave you some joy, based on what we were talking about in terms of joy? Melody?
Well, something that, not what happened just now, but normally if I love to watch, it sounds animals.
Mhm.
And if I watch, just a little animal video or something, I do feel joy. Because it is so natural, and there's no conceit, there's no, it's just beautiful, I think. And just watch them be themselves.
Yes.
I know that sounds strange, but
No, it's not.
no.
Jilene?
I have joy every March on my birthday because these purple iris
Oh.
come up in our backyard, and they were my mom's favorite flower,
Oh.
and every year on my birthday they come up, and I didn't plant them.
Really?
Really?
They were at the house?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, yeah,
Wow.
How lovely.
yeah.
That's really special. Yeah. Oh, I love purple irises,
They always
purple
smell like grape.
crocuses.
They always smell like grape.
Yeah, wow. Well, yesterday, I was out in the backyard watering our peach tree that's in the back. And right next to it, we have a stand with hummingbird feeders, the little mini ones, not the big colorful ones, but the little tiny little containers. And I was out there watering the tree, and this beautiful purple-headed hummingbird right there, looking right at me. It's like, what are you doing in my space? That's mine. Move away. And they are so bold. And you hear them peep, eh? They actually make sounds.
They were trying to get you out of there.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Really?
And I'm thinking, wow, these guys are so bold. Just, but not afraid, But it was just that moment of encounter, which was like, oh, that's so neat.
Yeah.
And the color and the beauty and just and that sound, of course, of the wings. You
And then they
hear.
turn on a dime.
Oh, they do, and it did. I tried to quietly pull out my camera. He was literally only here. It's like, I'm talking about what, 2.5 feet away from me, but just looking right at me like I'm in his or her space.
Yeah.
So, but that was my joy moment. That's yesterday. Anyone else? Like over the last 7 days, anything? Andrea?
I even wrote on here, mine all come with connection to people. I think,
People?
yeah, like yesterday, my neighbor, Sunday night, my neighbor called and went into this elaborate thing about, her mom's car's in the shop, her sister's car's battery's not good, she's gotta go to work, her husband has to work a different shift. And I'm like, okay. I said, well, you need to borrow my truck? And she's like, no, I don't need your truck. I said, will you give Natalia, her 7-year-old, a ride to school? I'm like, oh yeah, sure. No big deal.
Yeah.
And so, and so she was so grateful for it. And I enjoyed giving her a ride to school because I talked to her for a little bit, and she sits in the back seat of my truck, and she goes to school down by Walmart. She goes to a Christian-based school, and so she sits in the back, and Ellie was with me, and so Ellie was just and Ellie has a strong bond with her, so she's asking her all these questions,
Okay.
and we've seen her grow up, and so every time we see her, it's kind of a joy because she struggled with her speech for a little while, when she was younger, and now, she can carry on a full conversation like no problem, you would have never known she had, that she was so shy or whatever, but, so her project is she's creating the Rome Colosseum.
Really?
Yes, her project.
Oh,
So
wow,
she's
what's she making it out of?
Yeah, I guess, well, she couldn't tell us what she was making it out of, but then we talked to the mom
Yeah,
when we dropped her off. We said, okay, she's at school, do you need me to pick her up? She goes, maybe, unless Dad gets home in time. And so she said, yeah, she told us about her Coliseum. She goes, I said, did you use popsicle sticks, or whatever, right? And she's like, no, she goes, oh no, that would have taken forever. She said, no, we use foam.
oh, okay.
And so I kind of constructed it for her, and she did all the drawings on it. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's good, yeah.
neat.
So, yeah, so that, and then the same thing yesterday, I reached out to my brother, and I'm trying to, he's a long-lost brother, and he turns out he's living in Tucson, and I hadn't seen him since 2008.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow,
And I found him through Facebook,
wow.
and so, I've seen him now probably more than I have in my entire lifetime.
Wow.
So,
That's amazing.
so I'm trying to have lunch with him, or he's a singer. He's older, and he's a jazz singer / mariachi singer, and he still sings pretty good. And every once in a while, he'll have a show somewhere, and he's kind of like
Nice.
a lizard lounge. And so I've gone to see him sing, and I try to have lunch with him. I try to see him like at least every other week, if not weekly. And so I called him to plan lunch this week.
Yeah.
And then later last night, I texted my nephew, who's in Monterey, California, which I reconnected with. Him, I always had a connection, but we go years without talking to each other. But then when we see each other, it's like I just talked to him yesterday, So I said, we can't do that. I said, we need to stay more in touch with each other more frequently. So we've been texting each other, we call, and he'll text me and send me jokes or, back and forth. And I didn't realize how much I missed that until now that I have it more on a regular basis. And so I guess those three things.
So the
Yeah.
people, that
Right,
interaction.
and all in one day.
Wow,
So that was good.
yeah, that's amazing. Anyone else? But in the last week, a moment that sort of gave you a sense of joy or a feeling that you're, anybody?
How about a burden off of my back? I've had a bunch of, anybody that has a house knows that things go wrong. I've had a bunch of things done in the house, and the last one was the plumber, which I had been putting off for a very long time. Plumber came in, and it was like, it's fixed. It's like a burden off my back. I
Okay.
could just relax and
Yeah.
not have to worry about anything for a day.
I did.
Yeah. So, but that's an interesting one, right? So just having a burden taken off you can bring you that moment, right? And a moment of joy. It's done, and because things can really weigh on us and sort of draw us away from joy and happiness and yeah. Jelly?
I have been worried. I had a brain MRI, and yesterday I got positive results. Nothing's wrong.
Oh, wonderful. Well, that's a joyful moment. And things and that kind of moment puts a lot into perspective too. We can get so
imagine
overdone with everything
the
else, right?
Well, I was told I might have a rare condition
Oh,
with
my.
the growth on the nerve in my ear,
Oh, my
because I'm having trouble hearing out this morning.
Okay.
But then, of course, I hadn't even thought about a tumor. But then I had a dream where this doctor told me I had a tumor, but she wouldn't tell me how big it was.
Okay.
So then I'm worried about a tumor.
Oh,
But
but the MRI
No.
was good.
nothing unusual found.
Good.
Wonderful.
Well, that's
Yeah.
good. John?
A year ago, this last January, we were in Cambodia, and my wife visited a school and met the children, and we've ended up, we signed up to sponsor and help support a 14-year-old girl in her extra school studies. She wants to become a teacher. And when you get a letter from her, she calls you, "Dear Mom and Dad."
Oh,
That's
your mom, dad. That would do.
That's all it took. John's heart is gone.
That's special.
And what she studies hard, she's doing very well, her English is good, she writes very well, and so the sense that you can help somebody in another country
Wow,
to make a better life,
Yes.
that's what.
awesome.
Oh, that is amazing.
Now that fills me with joy.
For me,
Yeah.
Now I'm
yeah.
filled with joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's try to touch on some of the days that we didn't do together last week. If you could turn to page 40, and we're talking about joy in my heart, joy in my heart. And there's that song.
Yeah.
Maybe we should get it in church, right, Becky?
Camp song, good old.
yeah.
Camp song. For those watching online, and hello everyone watching online, Harold, Barbara, Eileen, and Glenn and Lorna and everyone else. It's pointing to the song, I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Who wants, anyone want to sing? You can sing it, you can sing it. So, joy. It says that joy is not something that's found out there, right? It's like happiness. We talked about happiness too. Right? Happiness is maybe something that's out there, maybe done to us, a gift that's given, or whatever it is. It could be a hug, it could be anything. But the idea that true joy, or that spirit of joy and the fruit of joy, starts from within. It says first joy is not something found out there, but is found deep inside. Where? Deep in our hearts. And that joy and peace are also deeply connected. The joy and peace are connected. And it goes on about reminding us of people of faith. The source of our joy is God's love, manifested in Jesus. So I want to we'll take a few moments as we review last week. So what is the joy that you feel really warms you up, that's from within? Can you think of moments in your life that there was that real moment of joy? And we talked about different kind of joy last week. We talked about joy that transcends our life, right? Spiritual gift, thankfulness, hug, love, right? Communion, so I mentioned that. And color,
Nature should be.
nature, right? So let's just take a few moments, and I know you have done your underlying or circling or whatever in your booklets. What is it in your own life that is a true deep joy, or has been at some point? You know, we all go through moments, right? So take a few minutes and maybe just turn to the person next to you, and then let's talk a little bit about that before we move on to the next part. So about 3-4 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, if you could just turn back.
that's very good.
All right. So as we share, and just a note for the people online, if you have something to share, send me an email, okay? And I'll share it with the group the following week. I do have something to share that Lorna sent from Brandon, Manitoba, north of North Dakota, in the cold. Anyway, she had some thoughts that she wanted to share, and I'll do that in a few minutes. So what did you talk about? What did you talk about? What joy? The joy.
What you're doing.
Yeah. Okay. So Andrea first, and then we'll go on.
Just I mean, I looked through when you said, you looked through your under, and just two things just kept coming up. My wood projects and my connection with family. My aunt and uncle came to visit, we took them to Tombstone, that kind of thing. So, but Ellie and I made these wood bunnies.
Wood bunnies.
And
Okay.
we were painting them, and you know, they're gonna go in our yard when we find finish.
Oh,
But,
nice.
yeah, so that brings me joy, is getting and working on these wood projects. And even when my machines break, you know, and then I gotta figure out how to fix them, you know, just staying focused and not giving up and saying, even though sometimes I feel like, I'll just go buy a new one and go throw it away, you know, like,
Yeah.
I get so frustrated, you know, and then I'll be like, no, I can do it, and then it's just an easy fix, and then it's just like, oh, but yeah,
You'll have to bring us one of your bunnies.
bunnies, okay.
Yeah.
She's got a picture of
I
them.
have,
Oh, you got a
well,
picture?
well, this is,
Unfinished.
it's completely unfinished, it's in really rough shape, but,
So what size are we talking?
they're meant for the yard,
Oh,
they're,
like this size? Kind of like 2-3 feet? 3 feet? Oh, okay.
it's got the cedar picket fence, cause that's, it's
With the bunny ears on it.
Yeah.
it's,
I don't know if the camera can see it or not. Can you?
Yeah.
I don't know, there you go. I don't know, can you get that, George?
Yeah.
All right.
So he's still, we painted them black and white and with pink ears and
Black,
nose.
white, and pink here.
Yeah, put some decorations on there
Okay,
and stuff.
that's great.
But yeah, it's fun.
Well, it's those little things, right? Isn't that part of it? It's the little things that can bring that sense of joy within us. It doesn't have to be the big, and we've read that. It could be just something simple, and that's why a kind word from someone or a smile can also give you that sense of joy. Yesterday, again, not just a hummingbird, but I went to go to 2 different hospitals to see some people yesterday up in Tucson, and the one person was not expecting me. And when the door opened to the room that she was having an examination, just to, you know, get some preliminaries, first she was shocked to see me. She didn't know I was coming. Didn't know I even knew about it. But then the smile to know that she knew that I was there, and it's not just about me. I bring the prayers and the presence of all of you from St. Francis, and that was just that moment. It was just that moment of connection and the smile that she had, and it was the knowledge that gave her a moment of joy and comfort. Gave me that, you know, I'm here, and I'm glad I'm here, and it's just that moment, fleeting moment. So, yep.
That reminds me that I shared briefly that I have a sister that I'm not in contact very often at all, and we have I just don't enjoy being around her. It's just all the,
What, family that you don't?
I just don't, but I felt ashamed because I felt like in a way it's a judgment, you're pushing someone away because you don't like this, blah, blah, blah. And something that we did last week worked on me, and I began to really feel ashamed about it. And I reached out to her, and she was just like the lady in the hospital, the person in the hospital. It was so unexpected. She was so happy, and I could tell that it meant a lot to her. And so, you know, it started with this kind of shame and guilt, and then it just
Right.
I was so glad because I felt like I'd given her the biggest gift
You gave her the biggest gift. Yeah.
that she
Yeah.
wanted, and I didn't realize it. You know?
Yeah. Wonderful. Anyone else? John?
I get joy from our Chinese Indonesian family
Right.
and our interaction with them. It's just,
And it's wonderful that you have given them something. You know,
Yes.
so joy, gratitude, the generosity, which we'll be talking about, it's both ways, right? It's the receiver and the giver, right?
and we had some of them a year ago at church here,
Yes, I remember.
and they really enjoyed the service.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay.
I don't want to. Are you joyless over there?
We have joy.
Anybody on this side? Now, Jaileen's already shared earlier.
Come on, Joyce.
Well, no, I mean, we just talked about the fact that, you know, joy is not something that, it's always confused with happiness.
Yes.
And and you really, it's not, it's in it's of itself, something that you have that's deep inside, whether you're happy or not about your circumstances at the present time. And for me too, like when in this page where he talks about it's connected to peace, joy is connected to peace.
Yes.
I really agree with that.
Yep.
Because, again, you know, circumstances may not be great at a particular time, but the peace of God should be able, as a Christian, to carry you through. And that gives you a certain sense of joy.
Yeah. So peace and joy, and that's so page 40, where it breaks down the 3 verses of the song. I've got the joy, 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 right? It mentioned the second verse is, I've got the peace that passes understanding down in my heart. And it says that the second verse reminds us that joy and peace are deeply connected. I'd like to read to you something that her name is Lorna Ball, and she's up in Brandon, Manitoba. She says, just a thought and observation, and she goes, with peace and self-control and having things happen to us that are not of our own making. Did anyone mention the serenity prayer? So she's sent me a question. And Reinhold Niebuhr's prayer, you know, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, right? That one. And the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Lorna's comment is, I find this prayer to be such a sustaining prayer in times when I either can't change something or must change something. It is a prayer that reminds us to give everything to God. Joy grows out of gratitude and thanksgiving, while peace grows out of serenity, forgiveness, and reconciliation. That's very good. Yeah. And by the way, she did want to share one thing. So she's practiced the release prayer, right, that we did last week. And she said she did a quiet day with participants in her church in Brandon. And she said, I was floored when an 81-year-old woman said, I didn't know that I needed to pray outside of church. And I especially didn't realize I could just sit and be in God's presence.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
81 years old, and she didn't realize that she could pray outside of church. This participant in the quiet day. And Lorna's comment was, wow. So she said, so if anything else, at least one person has seen a new light through the quiet days and doing the release and receive prayer that we've done here. Let's jump to Saturday as we finish our review of last week. Gratitude and joy. So we're in that section. And it says the root of joy is gratefulness. It is not the joy that makes us grateful. It is not the joy that makes us grateful. It is gratitude that makes us joyful. What do you think of that? What do you think of that quote? That's at the top of page 42. So the root of joy is gratefulness. It is not joy that makes us grateful. It is gratitude that makes us joyful. Let's take a few moments to just chew on that together, okay? Let's take, again, 3-4 minutes or so, 5 minutes at the most. Look at that quote, and how do you understand it? How does it speak to you? So it's not that, it's not that joy makes us grateful. It's that gratitude right here. right? That makes us joyful. So think about that for a few minutes. Okay? So gratitude. Gratefulness, gratitude. It says the root of joy is gratefulness. And it went on to say that it's gratitude that makes us joyful. You know, so we have to define, you know, gratitude. What exactly is gratitude? And one comment that Melody mentioned, for her, it has to include prayer. Somewhere in there, there's that prayer connection for that helps with her feeling that gratitude. So what is gratitude? What is gratitude?
Grace,
Hmm?
grace,
Grace?
Being thankful.
Being thankful, yeah, being thankful. Is it, so what's the difference between just being thankful and happy and gratitude? What is it trying to make, you know, make you think about?
It's gratitude, you would express it back to the other person.
Gratitude's expressed back.
It has more substance.
More substance? Okay, so again, it's not just that surface,
Right.
you know, oh, thank you, and kind of like,
right.
it's deeper.
Yeah.
It's deeper. And everything that these discussions are trying to get you to do as you read and reflect is that it's all deep down. It's all like the song, down in my heart, right? It's not the surface, it's not fleeting, it's not prideful. We were talking about pride here a few moments ago. It's something deep within. It's spirit grounded gratitude. You know, Thanksgiving. When we talk, when we have Thanksgiving each year, gratitude, the attitude of gratitude. You know, you hear of that. It's not just about thank you. You know, someone gives you something and immediately it's an automatic response. We're taught by our parents. They say thank you, right? But that kind of saying thank you as an automatic response is different from a deep sense of gratitude. Okay? Can you think about it for a second. Can you think of something that really reflects gratitude that you have experienced? That maybe, yeah, you can back.
When my partner Sue was dying and I was overwhelmed, I thought I was superwoman and I could do it, and I realized I couldn't. And I was gonna hire some help, and my friends organized themselves to bring meals to help me get her up, dress, put her to bed, help feed her. I have never felt gratitude like that before, and I've never been treated like that before. It was such a deep sense of thankfulness that,
Yeah.
you know, I could have paid somebody to do that, but out of the kindness and goodness of their hearts,
Yeah.
they stepped up and did stuff that they never thought they could do, in caring for someone who's dying. And I never forget it, ever. Those people are so important to me now in my life that they did that. And my one friend that organized every one of them, I said, you really don't have to do this. She goes, no, this is what friends do. And I said, no, I've never had a friend that would do this for me. And
Wow.
so it really impacted my life.
That's powerful. Yeah. Any response or comment to what Deacon Becky just made?
I have another little story, I don't know, it's not a response,
Yeah.
but what the next page when it's talking about somebody who, with their truck gave a bicyclist a lift
Oh,
up
yes,
there.
yes.
That reminded me of a story of deep gratitude of mine. Back more than 15 years ago, I had cancer and a hysterectomy and radiation treatment. And then they told me I had to have this other nasty treatment, that I couldn't drive myself. Up till then, I've been driving myself back to the hospital. They handed me morphine pills the minute I walked in the door, so they said, no, you can't drive. So I had just started another church, I was only there a couple of weeks, and the rector somehow found out, and I don't know how. He found out, and he arranged, and this wasn't like a mile away, this was like a 45-minute drive. He arranged for people to come meet me after my treatment and pick me up and take me home. And one day he couldn't get anybody, and he showed up in the waiting room himself and drove me home. And I just had tears in my eyes. I mean, I was usually on the doer side. I had never been on the receiving end.
And it's hard to be receiving
Yes,
when you
yes,
was
and
giver.
Hard to be on the receiving.
I was helpless. I could get myself to the hospital, but I couldn't get home because I wasn't allowed to drive. And the gratitude was enormous, and I never forget it. And it was like almost like a shock. I had never had anybody do something like that for me.
It's almost like, is this for real?
It was a deep shock, and peace of mind. It brought peace of mind and deep gratitude.
Yeah.
You know, it strikes me, excuse me,
Yeah, you go.
it strikes me that between the two stories here, that gratitude really includes, a core part of that is connection. Whether it's connection with spirit, I loved your term, spirit grounded, that was beautiful, I remember that. Or connection with people in which they're living their highest good. You know, they are, you know, like what you described, it was really Christ-like
Very.
in the giving.
Mhm.
And they're non-church people, that's what is.
Well, that makes it even more,
Yeah.
well, it's special regardless, but
Yeah.
that says something by itself. You know, God works through all people,
That's true.
you know?
It's true.
But joy and gratitude,
But the bottom
No.
line of that, of all of that, was love.
yes,
And
yes.
because of their love for Sue and for me, they were willing to do that. And I think in the same instance with Julie, their love for her, they wanted to help her. And you see that wherever you are, and it isn't necessarily a religious thing. It's just profound love.
But that wasn't a long time relationship, so that makes it even more rare. I
Yeah.
think.
It was a shock.
A reflection of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, God can reach out to people through the kind acts of other people. And sometimes they might be strangers or just friends or neighbors on the street, people that you may never have really thought of would be willing to come and help. You know, when Annette went through her surgery and cancer scare just over a year ago, neighbors, we kind of know them, we don't know them, you know, they were there knocking on the door with casseroles. We didn't ask for it, but this was their way of wanting to do something. But joy and gratitude do go hand in hand. To hear the MRI showed nothing, gave you joy, and probably somewhere within there was a gratitude to God, that deep sense that prayer was answered. You know, when the surgeon came out from Annette's surgery and said that it's, you know, not cancer and it's okay, there was this overwhelming relief.
Yeah.
It was a true moment of joy.
Yep.
And then the gratitude that, you know, we all pray in times like that. Gratitude that a prayer was answered. Could have been gone a different way. But joy and gratitude, they do work together. And that's why that quote, you know, gratitude makes us joyful. And it's sort of a hand-in-hand thing. And you can have joy and gratitude, which are two totally different feelings and emotions, but they come together. Yeah. Any other thoughts, comments before we move on to generosity? For this week's thing, generosity. Any other last comments? No? Okay. Well, let's flip. I'm gonna try to flip and not hit Tom. Okay. Generosity. On page 43, there was that story, and someone mentioned it just a moment ago. The two bikers bicycled, not bikers, I'm watching online. Those on bikes, they couldn't get up that steep hill. They were done. They were exhausted. And the comment was not another inch. But then that pickup truck came by, right? And they were able to get right up that was a mile. You know, it was maybe what, a mile to the top of the hill. And said there has never been a ride so sweet. I can still remember the utter joy I felt in the light of her, the driver, her generosity. So generosity. So what is generosity? How would we describe generosity?
Giving of oneself.
So, okay, so
Freely given.
giving of oneself,
Unearned.
okay. Unearned,
No expectation.
no expectation. Okay. There was something else I heard amiss.
I said freely given.
Freely given. Okay. Freely given. Okay. When you think of the story with the prodigal son on Sunday, or if you weren't there, most of you know the story. Is any of that related in that story? Generosity? Well, what was the generosity, if you want to use, if you're talking about generosity, is giving of oneself, freely given, unearned, no expectations, right? Can you see any of that in the
That's
action
the
of the Father,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's all there. So, can you see any of that in God? Can you see that?
Oh, yeah.
Now I can.
Right?
I always thought I really had to earn it.
Grace. Isn't that what grace is about? It's freely given, unearned, no expectations from God other than God gives as a gift. And a giving of oneself, and again, that can be in many ways, right? Anything else you want to add to that? Anything? John?
One comment on the bicycle example.
Yep,
One thing bothers me a little bit with that.
okay.
The woman didn't pull up and say, "Can I give you a ride?" So she didn't offer it initially. She had to be asked.
She was
And then
asked.
said she was bemused and then said, "Sure." So she responded to a need rather than freely giving
Okay.
it. That's a little different.
Yeah, so she responded to a need, right? She responded to a need, but she did respond.
Yeah, but
Right.
you wouldn't expect, I mean, if I'm driving up in a pickup truck and I see all these bikers, you wouldn't expect that they would ask you for a ride, because they're on a mission,
Yeah.
right?
But she
Yeah.
did stop. She pulled up to them. She did stop, so she
Right.
saw that they had a need or a problem.
Yeah, maybe if
Or maybe they
perhaps,
just pulled her over. or
Yeah.
Waved at her.
yeah. I mean, perhaps if the bikers were sitting there going, it may have prompted her to ask a question, or like, "Are you okay?" or whatever. But yeah, but that's a good
CPR.
observation. Deacon Becky?
I was just gonna share an experience I had when I did my pilgrimage in
Oh, yeah.
Ireland. And it was a day of about 13 miles, I believe.
Uh-huh.
And the gal that I was rooming with, she had twisted her ankle. And both of our feet hurt so bad. We were at the very end of everybody. And we came to our turn, and it said 1 kilometer to, I can't remember the name of it, Skylark, I think was the inn that we were staying at. And I said, how much is a kilometer? It feels like 1,000,000 miles to me, she said. And I mean, we just struggled that last kilometer. We get to the inn, lovely, lovely lady. She's explaining where we can go eat because we have to go get our meal in town. And I raised my hand and I said, I'm sorry, but we can't make it. My friend and I, we can't take one more step. We are so tired. We'll just sit here and eat power bars because I can't do it. I can't walk another half mile into town or whatever it was. She goes, oh, I'll give you a ride. You and your friend, I'll give you a ride in my car. And the restaurant owner, he's a friend of mine, he'll drive you back. Really? Okay, I'll go. I mean, it's that same kind of thing. It's just, I couldn't believe it. She would be so generous in giving us a ride. And what was so funny is the next day when we were walking back, because we had to reverse and go back that kilometer to pick up the trail, and I went, it wasn't very far, was it? Because I felt better the next morning.
Right. John?
Another thing to think about is how you respond to an offer of generosity. What if these women said, oh, no, thank you. I mean, you're offered something and rejected.
So response, right?
Correct.
How we respond.
Yep.
I have to be honest, the very first thing when I heard that story, it's like they got into the back of the truck. Would I have been so willing to help somebody get into my car? I would have paused. You know, I'm just telling the truth.
Well, a lot of things come to mind.
Well,
right?
safety
Also
issues,
safety,
You know.
safety,
Of
you
course,
know.
it depends when
Yeah.
this happened.
Yeah.
Because there was a time when we would stop
Oh,
for
yeah.
anybody on the
Oh,
road.
yeah.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's
60s
true.
and 70s.
Yeah, but how we respond definitely works with in terms of generosity. Let's look at the bottom of page 43. Would someone like to read that last paragraph? It talks about generosity. Someone like to read that? Anybody? Okay, John?
Generosity embodies a virtue that transcends more than material giving. In the grand scheme of things, it was only a mile-long truck ride, but it meant everything. I believe that generosity calls us to a spirit of abundance, a mindfulness of selflessness, and a willingness to share one's resources, time, and talents with others. At its core, generosity is an expression of love and compassion, enriching both the giver and the receiver
Yeah.
in immeasurable ways.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's a really
Yep.
important statement. So generosity embodies a virtue that transcends more than material giving. So it's not just about gifts. It's not just about giving something. It says in the grand scheme of things, of course, yeah, it was only a mile-long truck ride, but it meant everything. I believe that generosity calls us to a spirit of abundance, a mindset of selflessness, and a willingness to share one's resources, time, and talents with others. And at its core, it mentions that it's an expression of love and compassion. And there's a giver and a receiver. There's always going to be a giver and receiver in these situations. The difference is the one giving isn't expecting anything. Goes back to that. No expectations. You're helping to help. You're being generous of your time. You might be generous in a skill. Maybe someone needs some help fixing something in their house. Well, Andrea, she has her toolbox. You know, she can go and help Julie with something in her house or whatever. There's different ways that we can provide generosity, and it's not just about giving a money gift or giving a thing. It's about giving ourselves. It's actually an offering of ourselves but it's an expression of love and compassion. You know, we see a need, perhaps, and we want to respond to that and help. Yep.
And to that you respond with gratefulness.
And grateful, that's right, thank you. So from that, so then the response, right, is gratefulness. And that kind of gratefulness, again, it's from within. It's the response of gratefulness Deacon Becky experienced when neighbors and friends responded to a need that she didn't ask for that help, but they wanted to help. Their response to a need was to do something and be present and be there and be supportive. That's how we give. So it's, again, it's not just a thing, but it's our self, it's our presence, it's our love, it's a connecting with that compassion. And remember, compassion is more than just, it's not about sympathy, it's not just about empathy, where we understand something, but compassion is responding in a way we want to make a difference. There's a need, and we want to make a difference, so it includes an action. Compassion almost always includes some sort of action, some sort of response, with no expectation, to give of oneself. It's all freely given, and it makes a difference in people's lives.
If I might add, through most of my life, in my working life, I loved being generous. And I would love to give things when people weren't expecting it. I just knew that it's something they would love or whatever. And that brought me so much joy. And it's been a really hard adjustment. Now all of a sudden not being able to work and living on a limited income, where I can't do what I used to do. And you really have to work at thinking, you know, what's another form of giving? Because I was used to one kind of form,
Right.
and now I can't do that form
Right.
anymore. And so it's work. Now it's a work
Yeah.
to find ways to be generous.
So it's also reinventing yourself, right? So you know your own limitations, and sometimes we have physical limitations, or there might be some other limitations. We may want to help someone, but we don't have the money to help someone. How can we respond and be generous from ourselves to someone else and make a difference in their lives? But as you see, it all is intertwined, right? Gratitude, generosity, joy might bring a peace of God which passes all understanding. You might bring peace to somebody dealing with maybe a very chaotic situation. All these things work together in one way or another. Just wanted to quickly, before we finish off, touch on yesterday, and it was cultivating generosity, but it talked about birth. And it's not about birth of a baby. It says that on page 45, the root word for generosity, it looks like gene, G-E-N-E, meaning give birth. Like birth itself, generosity creates new possibilities. A financial gift can spark fresh beginnings. A word of encouragement can uplift a person's spirit. A simple deed can be the catalyst for reviving hope or creating unexpected connections. The story from Sunday about the ride illustrates how even a small act of kindness can open into moments of grace. I just want to take just 2-3 minutes, and we'll talk about this next week because we're going to go into more about generosity. What does that word mean when you hear that the root word for generosity means to give birth, and to give birth to new possibilities? So let's just take a few moments, and then we'll finish off with some comments, and then we'll be done for this week. Think about that. Think about that passage on page 45 regarding the root word for generosity, and how generosity blesses the giver and receiver. And we started to talk about that already. So think about that, and then if you just talk in your groups for just maybe about 3 minutes or so, 3-4 minutes, and then we'll have to just come together and finish off. Okay, so birth. The root word for generosity means to give birth. And generosity creates new possibilities, just like a birth, right? New beginnings, new hope, new life, all of that. Anything from your discussions that you'd like to share for a moment with everyone else? Joy?
I was telling them that in 1994, my mom died, and it was in April. It was April 18th, and we were really close. So I was going through a lot of depression, and then I was dealing with my dad, who also was, depressed as much as worse than I was. And so it was just kind of a down time. So even in August, I was still working on stuff, I wish I could fit in her clothes, but she was always smaller than me, so I had a box of clothes, but I did take her jewelry, and I was still doing that kind of stuff. And one day I was like really sad, and I was crying and everything, and this was August, and when the doorbell rang, and a guy was standing there with flowers.
Oh.
And he said, and I looked, and the card came with it, and basically, I know you're still grieving for your mom, and so we're thinking about you. It was 2 friends of mine.
Oh, that's so
And
sweet.
I was so shocked, and it was so, because everybody, and rightfully so, after a funeral, people send you flowers, send you cards. I had all kinds of things, and then everyone forgets. That's the way it should be, but still the other person is feeling bad, me, at that point. So I started doing that for other people.
Mm-hmm.
I waited a couple of months after their loved one passed away, and then I get them flowers. And then they would all say the same thing. They'd say, Joyce, that is like such a wonderful thing, because everyone, moves on. And so, I mean, that was something that somebody did for me, and so I ended up doing
Paid
it.
it forward.
Yeah, I paid it forward for a lot of other
yes,
people.
Yes.
So that kind of birthed a little habit of mine.
Well, that is wonderful. Yeah. John?
I think one could say that generosity would begin at birth, because parents with a child, as that child in the youngest years, the parents demonstrate by what they do, teach that child to be generous. If the child grows up in a very selfish family, that's how they're going to end up. So at an early age, you teach that child and show by example generosity.
Show by example, right? And speaking of children observe everything.
Absolutely.
Everything. Children don't grow up racist, and children
Nope.
don't grow up nasty and bully.
Nope.
They learn. They learn that.
Yeah.
And so it makes a difference. And if we want them to grow up and to be able to express love or compassion or generosity, they learn it from somewhere, right? They learn it from somewhere. But also we need to teach them that within that is that connection with God.
Yep.
And prayer and God's presence and spirit. And that's an important part, which sadly families have, today, not everyone has that connection with God. And that's part of our role, is to help people to realize, God's love and abundant and generous and lavish love and grace is there, which helps people to express that gratitude and in turn pay it forward, which was what.
I was gonna say, like, I used to be amused by people that say things like, you know, I thank my lucky stars.
My lucky star.
Something, and then,
Get your falling star.
yeah, because I
You're
thought, what's
fine,
lucky
yeah, right,
stars?
yeah, yeah.
And it was like, I had to realize, like, somebody had, you know, like, when you're feeling, when something happens that's good or something, the natural reaction is you feel like you have to thank somebody.
Mhm.
And if someone doesn't acknowledge God, then they're like, you know, looking for thanking lucky
Take
stars.
their lucky stars.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's still a force greater than themselves, so let's
Yeah.
start.
It's a star.
Well, it's just the person who made the star.
any other comments before we finish off?
I was just, so, I had such a pleasant memory when John was speaking, talking about raising the children. Some of my earliest memories was during holidays, my father always brought home a stranger. And he would always bring home some guy that's not married,
Yep.
that's, you know, and so our Thanksgiving and our Christmas tables and such were always filled with people that we didn't know.
Mhm.
And, but I always was just so proud of him for that generous heart, you know, and welcoming the stranger.
Yeah.
And that example, which your father did, it was obviously part of who he was. What was, so how did that impact you and others who may have been at the dinners that he brings somebody? What kind of impact?
Well, it was always, we had to kind of continue it, because then our work was to make them feel included and
Right,
welcome,
yeah.
and to learn about them, and, you know, that kind of thing. No, I just thought it was a great example.
That's wonderful. Well, we'll talk more next week about cultivating generosity. We'll do the review of that. So please, again, mark down in a journal or underline, circle, color code, whatever you want to do, and bring it to our class. And again, those watching online, send me an email if you have either something you want to add to the conversation or any questions you have that I could bring to the group here, okay? And then next week, we talk about cultivating patience. So we'll review generosity, and then we'll start the talk about patience, okay? So let's finish off with a prayer. And this comes from St. Francis of Assisi, or at least it's attributed to St. Francis. Lord, help me to live this day quietly and easily, to lean upon your great strength trustfully and restfully, to wait for the unfolding of your will patiently and serenely, to meet others peacefully, joyously, to face tomorrow confidently and courageously. Amen. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.